Hello, hello.
Hello.
You?
Good. Good afternoon.
It's late for Dragon.
Hi, Yushi. Hi, Liz. Hi, Arin Basu. Good to see you. And hi, Dragon. Great. Cool. Just press all the buttons. Start streaming going. Great. Well, welcome along, everybody. So, feel free to unmute, jump in whenever you feel like it, wherever you can. And we'll just start chatting. Rowan, you were going to, I think you were going to talk about some references this week. Because we had
Yeah,
a
I
big
think that
last
was
week.
that was the big push that we had from last week. So maybe I can share my screen if you enable that.
Yeah, sorry. There you go.
Yeah, I think we talked about it a little bit last time, so I can show it now.
I think Canada has had computer problems this week because of the extreme temperatures. I think it's slowing down a bit.
Yeah. Hi, all.
Hello. Hi, Arin.
Hi, how are you all? Steve?
Good to meet you.
Right to meet you. Good to see you, Rowan. How's the heat wave up there in Canada?
Not good for my laptop, mostly.
Oh, that's clever.
my computer is overheating at the moment and not happy about the screen share. I'll close some tabs and then try again.
Mm-hmm. You need to get a fan and direct it at the machine, maybe.
The fan
because that's it with
definitely
MacBooks, no?
at me.
The MacBooks are they factored in the aluminium case as part of the heat sink. So if your ambient temperature goes up, it's going to hurt. Great, and it's early morning for you, Arin.
Yes, well, it's 7 o'clock. It's not too bad. It's kind of okay. It's very cold today. Sorry to bring you that news because it's in the southern hemisphere.
Winter time. Great.
Did you have anything you wanted to share on your experiences using Curvenote over the last few weeks? Or any questions? Arin?
I mean, you're asking me?
Yeah, I just wondered. We've been chatting quite a bit on the community Slack off and on, but it would be great to hear.
Yeah, I'm really happy. It's a first-class writing environment. I'm really glad about it. Yeah, it's very good. Nothing has been broken yet, so I'm mighty pleased about the whole experience of it. Yeah, it's a new experience.
That's great. Are you writing exclusively, or are you also using sort of bringing in content from Jupyter and mixing?
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, bringing the content from Jupyter, but it's kind of I look upon it more as a place where you can write and you can weave in Jupyter tables and figures and codes and everything else in. I mean, what Jupyter would have been ideal is what a combination of Curvenote and Jupyter Notebook gives us. I mean, there have been so much of this morphing of the Jupyter over the years. You had Jupyter notebooks to start with, then Jupyter Lab, then you've got Interact and all kinds of experiments to see that whether we can really weave things. But I think a mix of Curvenote and Jupyter is probably perhaps the best thing that has happened to Jupyter as such. Not sure if Jupyter is good to Curvenote, but definitely it's a fantastic marriage between the two.
Cool.
That's how I see it, of course. I mean,
we think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the things we thought about early on as well, or while we were thinking about this and how we explain what we're doing alongside Jupyter, especially to people who are very sort of open source focused and very supportive of, strong supporters of open source.
Yeah.
I think without infrastructure, though, there's only so far you can take that whole experiment. And as soon as you have somebody who can set up and start looking after infrastructure to allow, these different documents and to be related to each other and to perform some form of sort of centralization and providing a central reference, then it's difficult to really take a big step towards reproducibility and things like that.
That's right.
A bit like how DOIs have done for citations. That centralization of the metadata and somebody looks after that has enabled DOIs to work. And so that's why Rowan and I saw that, like somebody building out a product that brought the infrastructure into play was really important, and there's something that would work alongside Jupyter really well.
Yes, and there has been some kind of those efforts as well, particularly with Stenciller. Stenciller started very promisingly. If you think of Stenciller the last couple of years, and I happen to know the lead developer of Stenciller. He came and he gave us demonstration at the university, and we grew friendly. But Stenciller was never quite the thing that they always wanted it to be. It wanted to be everything. Like, say, for example, you could inherit the inherit the objects from one chunk to the next. And they said, all right, you write in Python, you write in R, in a chunk, then you write in plain text and you can inherit the objects, but it never really quite intuitive to start with. Now they have gone all over, all bonkers, because it looks very nice, but it's insanely complex to bring it to work to actually put out a properly formatted document. But having said that, it's a great, as you were saying, infrastructure to start with, that you can have everything in a space of a document and authoring environment.
I was on Stencilla's Explore page, and I actually see that your testing projects are on there.
I tried, and then I decided that, all right, but it kind of brought about recently because I was showing off Curvenote to a colleague, and he says, oh, May, you can have Stenciller, it's the same thing, the new breeds of all those snazzy apps. And I said, oh, well, not quite. And then I realized that he was referring to the new avatar of Stenciller, which is nice, but needs a lot of work.
Yeah, it does still feel like the final, like the way we've designed Curvenote is very much about sort of like evolving and building your work as you go, and then making use of it at like all the way along. And I feel like Stencilla is much more about the final published product that's done.
Yes.
So after you've created it.
Yeah. So it's more like a repository of your work, and then you just show it off to the world.
Yep. That's cool. I think my computer's in the state where it can screen share now.
No.
Had Arin or Dragon had you guys seen the equation and internal referencing pieces?
Yeah.
Did you?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, that's really nice. Yeah. And I was
So-
following Lee's comment about the internal numbering too. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, the numbering side of things, well, I don't know. It was way more complicated than I thought it would be. I suppose mainly because we're having to bring in content from external documents as well. And so that's something that we've been thinking a lot about. But yeah, you can now reference, so this open two braces searches all of the articles and notebooks in the project, and then also shows you things like citations, which you can do for that first sort of start typing, and it gives you that. And then that is all the DOI academic citations that are in there. And then also equations, which you can number, and then they actually get shown in the app as well when you're actually like hover over them, which is, well, I'm quite excited about that feature as well. And then the figure ones as well can go in there, and then you can reference figures specifically, which is great. I think this is all the way through to LaTeX now, Steve.
Yes.
As well.
Yeah.
Oh.
That was a bit of a push last week. So that all hooks up and the LaTeX numbering works too.
Yeah, and then section numbering as well. So that was the big push for well, the last few weeks, as well as some performance pieces that we've started to integrate in. And I think Steve's working hard on the LaTeX templating, and maybe is sick of talking about the LaTeX templating side of things. There's a lot of nuance in working with LaTeX, especially if you're trying to extend at that sort of base level, at the template level. There's a lot of gotchas there. So
it's all gotchas. I think.
They're all gotchas.
That's why it's got its own Stack Overflow. That's how many gotchas. But it's good. The plumbing's almost there. I just have it now so that I can build from any template on the GitHub repo, and that all works nicely. It uses this new Ginger templating that we put in place. So you can do, if you're a template designer, you say, or if you take a template from a conference and want to port it, as it were, to be compatible with Curvenote, which we'll do a lot of in the initial. You can do things like doc.authors.name inside the template using the template markup we're providing. Yes, like this. And that will pull the metadata out of Curvenote. So we'll document that. It's almost like you've got these well-known documented data structures that you can use inside LaTeX to pick things out of your Curvenote document. And the idea, of course, is if once somebody sets this up for a template for a particular conference or a particular university, then it's reusable. It only needs to be set up once. And then when it comes along for you to export your paper, it's just selecting out of the list to get the right template. So
which means a user can select what template they wanted to use with their LaTeX export, isn't it?
Yes. And then you can ask for the raw tech project, as in text files, the style files and everything, or the final rendered PDF.
Oh, I see. But I reckon that the final rendered PDF will be useful with the supplied template once we have fully baked in bibliography support. In other words, at the moment we have got DOIs, and that's fine. But say if we have some way of bringing in something like Zotero or say a bibJSON from a bibtex that then can read atypical resources such as books, monographs, reports that at the moment are not assigned a DOI, but let's say something like an ISBN A or whatever it is, then that can read it and can format. So that's something that probably will need to be in, isn't it? Because then it becomes a standalone document generator, Curvenote, i.e.
Is that at this stage, do you see like sort of one of the main pieces, or are there other pieces that you see as those things need to be there before it's something that is a standalone document?
No, I mean, not necessarily, because what can be done is that we can export it as a LaTeX, and then we can process it further, adding our own bibliography with those atypical kind of citations, and I can work through that. And that's fine. I mean, it's not a deal breaker, but yeah, it would be a nice feature to have.
So I guess maybe rephrasing that a bit, is that one of the pieces that you see as like high value, like just in terms of us prioritizing all of the many things that we need to do? Is the citations piece one of the top in your?
I mean, in a sense, if you think in terms of writing an academic document, and then it's fantastic to be able to use the UIs, but the world that we live in does not always have UIs for everything, you see. So quite often people write reports and books and stuff like that, for which there is a standard citation kind of setup. And also, well, it's part of the templating, but so that, for certain kinds of templates, say APS 7, for example, which is a standard that I see has been adopted in Curvenote, but that can be Vancouver, that many of us write for biology and medicine. So what happens in those cases is that they have got a specific type of citing your references. So let's say, for the sake of argument, if we could bake in, say, okay, style your citations like this. So just goes like, instead of last name YYYY, we have now one in parentheses. It can be square parentheses or curved parentheses. Yep. And then it becomes a matter of just specifying what particular style we're after, and a document gets exported like that. Yep. So then we are not so much dependent on the intermediate step of generating a LaTeX, but we go straight from a document, which is a beautiful WYSIWYG, as you can see in Curvenote, to a final PDF. Yep. But then you might argue that kind of defeats the other purpose of setting up Curvenote, which is that it has to be a first-class, exploratory explanation kind of document where you can do the magic of interactive texts and interactive figures and things like that, which if you render it into LaTeX, it's kind of a 2,000-year-old format of static content. Yeah. Is that a deliberate and nice design direction that we want to go, or is we just want to leave it as LaTeX as a good supplement, an academic supplement to an otherwise beautiful HTML document that everyone can read? And that's a holy grail to some extent.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we think is that we can help with is just allowing people to do both of those things at the same time, so that you can export to these PDF static documents and also have a interactive and exploratory article based in Curvenote as well. Because a lot of the feedback that we have gotten is that people aren't going to do both of those things, but they are willing to put in a bit more effort to do exploratory and interactive work if they can also get the PDF out for free, basically. Yes,
lovely. Because what happens at the moment is when we submit something to say something like a preprint server, and we say that, okay, all our code and all our outputs are also available as a GitHub repo. Mm-hmm. Fair enough. But just imagine if we could say that, okay, all our code and funnel output are also available as in the following Curvenote document, and we give the Curvenote URI, and then that's it. So they'll say 2 different versions, and who knows, one day a format such as the one that Curvenote gives us becomes a dominant kind of academic output, because people can play with these figures. You can change texts and you can weave the magic right therein.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm very excited about that.
And I guess that's what we're hoping to encourage. Because in a way, not make it 2 different pieces of work, make it the one piece of work, and then you can get your hard copy out from that.
Yes.
We think of some type of snapshot system where you decide what the hard copy will be at a certain state of the document. But yeah, because at the moment, people would have to go to the extra effort beyond their paper to create something like that for people to consume. The interactive thing isn't a step towards their PDF.
Yes.
It's an extra thing.
Which was my motivation for writing up that little tutorial on weaving with Curvenote and Overleaf. But with your templating system, Stephen, Ravan, I think we are moving into that direction where we see that intermediate overleaf step is going to be unnecessary.
Yeah.
Well,
I think that's what we hope to minimize and remove the need.
Yeah. I think there's like, if you are comfortable and want to write in LaTeX, I think Overleaf will always be a much superior LaTeX writing environment and processing environment. But I'm hoping that, or my view of the world at least, is that people are wanting to do their PDFs with as little, like going into header files and libraries and all of that. It's mostly about the content and making sure it gets out in the right format.
Exactly. And the good thing about Curvenote, and thanks to you all, is this is the LaTeX that gets rendered is so much more clean and lean compared with if you take a markdown document and then convert that using Pandoc, for instance. The header itself is a headache to fix.
Okay.
With so many dependencies and so many of these things that can break things very, very easily. Whereas this one, what you are rendering here is quite straightforward. Like, here's your text, here's our preferred headers, here's style, here's my logo. You take it or leave it, how you want to do it. And I mighty like that.
That's, I'm sure, good for you to hear, Steve, when you're deep in making that actually nice at the moment.
It is just as clean at the moment. In fact, not so long ago, we wrote the deduping code that goes through all the packages to make sure they're only added once, and the same with all the commands.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's also quite interesting to see that there is almost like a distill article kind of an output that you have decided. Was that a deliberate choice that once you get the PDF, it looks like as if it's a nice distill article. Was that a deliberate choice, or was it something that you
for which one? Maybe it's just design convergence. Which which output were you referring to?
The LaTeX output, the PDF that gets rendered.
Oh, just the style of it, you mean?
Yeah, that was my question.
Oh,
so Curvenote.qi.
Oh, I'm not sure. Are you talking about distill as in distill pub, or that it is distilled?
No. I think if you look at the R Markdown and R Studio, they have this style called the distill, and distill these days have become kind of a talked about thing in terms of how you present complex ideas and concepts and make it so much more intuitive. Yes, exactly. And I have a feeling that when you render a Curvenote article, it has that kind of an appearance where you have got a masthead,
Yeah.
And things like that. So that's why.
There's certainly a lot of inspiration taken from distill.pub.
Yeah, that was mine.
Yeah,
that was what I was asking.
Yeah, definitely.
I mean, it's not exactly that true, but you can
No.
still have the asides and all of the kind of stuff possible.
Yeah.
I actually started with an archive, somebody's archive template, and then worked up from there, making it less basic.
I see.
And then I brought in, I guess that header section.
Yeah.
Then I brought in sort of more elements from the to sort of match our own line style. But
yeah,
it's lovely, very clean design in Distill. So yeah, it's definitely something to look toward. Great.
That's fantastic.
What's your background, by the way? Or what field do you work in, Arin? Because we're mostly, with the exception of Dragan, I think, geoscience sort of background. Or
no. Oh, you mean my background, of course, is medicine, public health, epidemiology.
Okay.
And
Great.
Yeah,
cool.
I'm not sure if we had anything else planned this week. We were too busy working.
No. It's good to meet everybody. We've got Liz on as well.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll have met on the Slack, and Dragan also. Liz, what have you been up to this week? You've been kicking the Jupyter extension around.
I don't even know. Jumping around everywhere. Yeah, I was definitely playing a lot with the Jupyter extension this week and last week. Just kind of thinking about a lot of the versioning and whatnot kind of happens there. So just kind of understanding it more. And I don't know, I guess I feel like it's one of those places where when I've talked to people, there's been a lot of questions just because you've got like the collaboration side of things, the drafting, which is on Curvenote, but not in the notebook side. So I've been trying to like clear that up in my own mind and then be able to like answer those questions for myself so I can answer them for other people. So I don't know. I know there's a lot there.
Yeah. It's definitely an area that still needs some more simplification. Your suggestion on maybe taking the save button off cells, I think definitely is a step in the one direction. Step in the right direction. Because we started out with a very cell-centric approach, and then realized it was actually a notebook-centric, or being able to work and then take a snapshot of the notebook. And we want the UI to try and push people towards doing that by default. Even though you still need the cell controls in there, because at some point you're going to have to do a revert cell or something technical, and then you still need that. But
yeah, I guess it was like there's no way for me to like. I can't imagine a cell that doesn't live in a notebook anywhere. And that was where I was kind of like, wait a minute, it has to live somewhere first.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, having all those versions, having it live all over the place is awesome. So
yeah, that's a good idea.
One of the things that we have seen working with table cells in Jupyter notebooks and then bringing it into Curvenote is just that, say, if you're working in Python and use tabulate, then that's okay. Okay, if you're working in pandas and then produce it as a pandas data frame, then the table kind of renders okay. But if you then do something like convert that into a LaTeX table, or if you want to convert that into a markdown table and then try to bring it into Curvenote, then the cell that is rendered in Curvenote is an HTMLized version of that LaTeX code or markdown code, and that is something that if can be fixed would be really beneficial, because then what happens is you can render a cell in Jupyter Notebook as, say, for example, well-formatted table, and then can bring it into Curvenote and it just lives exactly like that. And I was showing Ravan the other day that we were trying and playing with R in Jupyter Notebook. And I used a very nice package in R called Tidy. It's called Broom, but Broom, what that does is that you can take a, say, a regression table and then apply a function called Tidy, and it tidies up as a very nicely formatted markdown table. Now, at that point, if I wanted to import that particular cell from the Jupyter Notebook into Curvenote as a cell or chunk or as a block, then what happens is this, that instead of the tidied table showing up as an HTMLized tidy table, what it shows is the underlying code in it in an HTML code. And that then kind of breaks the appearance of the table then and there. I mean, it's not a big problem if we use a regular output from a cell in Jupyter Notebook, and it will show up just as it is. But then again, as you know, in Curvenote, we cannot edit that table.
Would you
know, that we have imported from Jupyter
would you
Notebook.
want to be, or would you want to further edit that table inside of Curvenote on
Well,
in that workflow?
Not let me edit it, you know. I mean, I can edit a regular text block.
Yeah.
But not an output. In other words, I cannot edit a code, or I cannot edit things that will then run. And that's all right. I mean, I can understand the logic now.
Yeah.
But those minor things can be really useful, because we know that we are not going to make tables inside of Curvenote, isn't it?
At this stage, no. I think that citations and tables are sort of top of list to add, is allow you to, probably to start with, it will be importing a bibtex file, which you can output from Zotero or Mendeley or Papers. And then the second one that we were debating on Monday, which order these were, are tables, and improving that, and adding that as something that you can work with directly inside of Curvenote.
That's fantastic. I mean, at the moment, my workaround or hack, if you will, is that I open a what you call a code block, and then use it either as a markdown table or as a LaTeX table, and then after export, I take off the verbatim environment out, and then the thing renders.
Yeah. Well, so you're passing through Curvenote, and then over in your LaTeX environment, you're doing some quick post-processing.
At the moment,
yeah. That's cool.
Okay, because it's bound with LaTeX, and this is because it's a LaTeX table. Did I follow that right? Yes.
That makes sense.
Hmm.
And are
When
are the tables that you're working with? I think I saw one of your examples, or one of your public documents on Curvenote that had like lists of papers and references, and so it wasn't necessarily documents, or it wasn't necessarily data or traditional numerical data that you were trying to show in a table, but it was other pieces that you would, that I would say that you would want to edit over in Curvenote. Whereas when I had traditionally thought of tables, it was more of this numerical data that's coming from your coding environment. And so that did change my thinking a little bit about how and where you're editing this, and is it tied to Python?
Yes, it's a brilliant observation, Rowan. And that's something that brings into mind the disciplinary differences between how tables are perceived in various, kind of disciplines. So if you're coming from a math, physics, hard sciences background, you'll say, why do you have so much text in your tables? Why can you not have simple tidy data? I'll say, all right, for us, tables is like, okay, a Ben-Hur written in a cell. And if you look up government reports and things like that, that's what you'll see, that there's a very peculiar concept of table, and the culprit, I'll tell you, is Microsoft Word.
Okay.
Because if you strike up a table in Microsoft Word, it'll let you write anything in those cells. And that convenience has forced people not to think of what tables are for. So they'll say, oh, okay, anything can be a table, you know?
Yep.
And you know, this was a conscious decision on part of people who first drafted Markdown to say that we are not going to have tables at all in the first place. Then people said, well, no, that's not going to work for us. So you must have a table that will have a blob of text inside the cells and that we can read. Is it a good practice to have a table where we can have a definition list or a regular list? I don't know. I mean, I know that my colleagues would rather like to have a table which has got a header and a paragraph of text in them in the cells.
Yep. Yep. That makes complete sense.
Okay, so I understand now that your use of pandas and the various table export options is basically a workaround to create any table. Or
Yes.
you also, yes, it's not because you have data in pandas, you're just putting in the data frame because that's a good route to a
Yes,
quickly
exactly. So what I
formatted
do is
table,
I create a kind of a JSON
representation.
thing, and then I convert that into a pandas table. I say, all right, this is pandas table. This comes into Curvenote.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, see, it's great. Yeah, I used pandas for a few years and only ever did head. Well, I only ever did basic output because I was dealing with lots of numerical data. It wasn't until recently that I discovered that I can read any table structure, HTML, LaTeX existing, and output to them as well.
Yes.
I hadn't realized that sort of input output that could do such a rich and very separate.
And I think much of that has come from pandas developers working in close collaboration with the R Studio and R Markdown people. So you can see that now there is so much nice overlap between what pandas can do and what R Markdown can do, and then how we can apply the code semantics across the two languages. It's really a pleasure to work in Python for data analysis now.
Yep.
If you're coming from the background of, say, R, for that matter, and go in either direction.
Is R the dominant language in your field, would you say?
That's a very good question. The answer is probably yes, because a lot of people who work in, say, genomics and epidemiology tend to use R, but also use Stata quite a lot. So there are quite a few languages people use. And as you know that, Jupyter notebooks as inferior processes allow them. So you can use Stata as an inferior process in Jupyter notebook. You can use definitely R and Julia, and other languages as happens. So including JavaScript for that matter.
Yep.
Certainly, as you know that.
I have used JavaScript before. I did a machine learning and JavaScript course, and that was, I used notebooks just to make it more accessible and easy to not have to deal with the build environment.
Yeah.
It worked well. Yeah. And that was a Babel kernel of all things.
Yeah.
But there's lots of kernels out there, yeah. C++.
And that's the strength of Jupyter. And the weakness is Conda, of course, because Conda has their own versions, which becomes a nightmare. If you have one version of Conda installed Python in your machine and you have got another version in your own, and then it messes up your either ZS, HRC, or Bash RC, whatever you use.
Mm.
You know, I used to fight with that all the time, but I've not given up.
Yeah, I've given up on environments. I've moved to use VN even though my base installs Conda.
Much better.
Yeah. Mm. And then Jupyter as well, it becomes more of a, it's becoming more of an IDE, so the Jupyter Lab direction, isn't it? So because you get a debugger, you have lots of extensions. It's just stepping away a bit from the document.
Yes.
Mm.
I mean, Jupyter reminds me a lot of Emacs.
Really?
It's
Okay.
it's a bit like that, you know. Emacs in org mode, say for example, you can bring in anything you like, and then you can weave in your code, and you can weave in your text and all of that. You know, I mean, yeah. Back in the Stone Age, when I wrote my thesis, I used ESS, which was Emacs Speak Statistics, that I used R with Emacs. It was a good experience, but it was a steep learning curve.
I never used Emacs. No. I was in Vim, but that was the two camp thing, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah. I was taught Vim and Vi in my first job to Vi because there's always a Vi available. If you end up having a terminal into something, you can always, Vi is always there.
Yeah.
It's interesting, and that's experiences go around, and sort of got VS Code now, which is notebooks are happening in VS Code.
Yeah.
And the VS Code are putting a lot of work into making that a nice experience. So there's lots of extensions appearing there too. So yeah, and maybe what we'll see is a proliferation of that maybe, and what you'll get is the server and the document format is what persists, but then people's way of interacting with them sort of
that's lovely.
proliferates to different clients, no?
Yes.
So you can use your client of choice.
I mean, it's a little bit like Atom and Hydrogen. So Atom Editor and the Hydrogen add-on, which kind of brings you a Jupyter notebook kind of an environment within an Atom Editor, and many people swear by that. It's quite interesting. And I think the forking of Interact was based on that design philosophy, if I remember their initial history when that first came out.
Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Interact anyway.
I've never seen this Hydrogen add-on for Atom. That's cool.
But Atom was quite versatile too as an editor, and people have hacked Atom to make it like a text editor using Markdown, of course.
Yep, that's very cool.
Yeah, I remember that. Was it related to Sublime or no? Sublime use Atom as a...
Atom and Sublime came out around the same time, and then Atom, I think, was made by GitHub, and that was their first collaboration with Microsoft, and then Microsoft bought them, and then VS Code sort of came out of the woodwork.
Okay, so that direction, right?
Yep. That's my understanding of the history there between two massive companies.
Great.
Awesome.
Great. So that's a big vote for tables.
Yep.
Tables, and we won't have to do. Yeah.
Both.
The third thing that was circling in our
Citations
discussions, because the third thing that was circling was the figures.
Yes.
Was the figures on Jupyter outputs.
Figure captions.
Figure captions and numbering. Because we can add that on images now that we insert, but not yet on the Jupyter outputs. And that was the thing we were wrestling with in our little priority stack. Which of these three, what order do these three come in?
Excellent.
Have renewed figure to tackle citations, I think that it's and I was trying to bring in my PhD thesis, and the first thing, I don't want to go in and find each DOI and cite them when they have a bibtex file hanging out there. So, and I wanted to use that as sort of a testing ground for some of the next ideas that we're starting to work on. So I think that's, well, is something that also has to happen. So yeah.
And it's a catch-all as well. I mean, because you can bring in anything in there, no?
With bibtex.
Whether it's books or, yeah.
And I think all of the major reference managers all talk bibtex or can export to bibtex at least. Is that, are you mostly in Zotero, Arin?
Yes, I use Zotero. I have also used Mendeley earlier, and we also use EndNote quite a lot, particularly at the university. Many colleagues use EndNote.
Great.
And EndNote does produce bibtex, but you have to have a little bit of work to get the EndNote citations produced as bibtex, and that needs to be kind of shown to people. It's not native, because in general, what happens in most libraries, as I understand, you have the librarians and information specialists who teach and train students to use citation management. And many of them I have found are kind of bibtex averse. They'll say, bibtex is fine, but EndNote is quick and we can quickly strike up a citation. There's a tradition that has gone on. I mean, there's a history to that. So unlike in physical sciences where bibtex, and of course in life sciences now, bibtex is becoming the de rigueur of our bibliography management systems, including JabRef and others. People who use EndNote, they have their own kind of export and import style. The other thing that is important here is this, that if you search the NCBI's National Library of Medicine's databases, then they do not let you export their citations as bibtex, but they will let you export as something called nbib. And that's a very peculiar thing. So, but what Zotero has done is this, that if you can type in PM IDs or the PubMed IDs, then Zotero will generate the necessary kind of the references. And then from Zotero, of course, you can export as bibtex, and that's fine. So there are those little workarounds that need to be worked out. But I use Zotero because it's kind of free, open source, quote unquote hackable, and it's you can do whatever you like. Gazillions of add-ons. It's fantastic. Yeah, and say apps like RStudio will let you specify a Zotero API and then draw in all the citations it has on their web API. And I think one of the other things is this, that if you can use Zotero bib, then you're pretty much sorted in terms of resolving your DOIs and things like that.
Yep.
And then get directly those into Curvenote.
I think that is probably the way that we'll end up going. I don't know, it might take a couple steps to get there, but integrating with Zotero probably more fundamentally as our citation translation service, and having parts of Zotero even come out and be expressed inside of Curvenote.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's a good idea. I mean, because they give you an API that anybody can use, and I don't think there is a limit on the API use. So if a user, say, specifies the API, what do they call that? There's an API key that they give you. And so if you can insert that API key, and then what then happens is this Curvenote or the app zaps in all the web-based references. It still means that your user can mess up if they have messed up their references in Zotero itself. But well, I mean, come on.
Yep.
The one thing with Zotero I found is that a lot of times if I click the button to, magically import it into Zotero, some of the, and then like exporting it to bibtex, some of the like special characters like accents and things on letters don't work. So that's probably something to look out for, and a major benefit to even more to use Curvenote with all this stuff. But it's really stressful to have to like go dig into the bibtex file every time you save it to update those things.
Yeah.
I've tried playing with it in Zotero and like saving it in there, and it doesn't work. So yeah, it's like I've had so many of them that I'm like, oh yeah, here's my revision, it's perfect. And I'm like, your citations are broken again. You're like,
yes,
yeah.
yes, it's a persistent problem, exactly. Yes,
Yeah.
and the other thing happens is they mess up with the years quite often, the date.
Yeah.
So you have to be ultra careful about putting in the date. So there's still a little bit of processing that you need to do once that those things are zapped in Zotero. It's not like magic.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's
well,
still better
Zotero.
than bringing in an entire bibtex.
Okay, exactly.
That's terrible.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's just something maybe on your guys' side to look and see, or if there's some way to save it better or not lose those changes. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I haven't used bibtex much. On this side, I have to, I have to wrestle with papers that have symbols in the title. In LaTeX, won't render them, and that's because the symbols they're not in LaTeX. Is that right? Is bibtex has its own flavor of how to express maths? Or it was just in the metadata in a completely the wrong way.
It's just that it's not formatted from like the website, like so it doesn't pull down correctly in Zotero to then be output whatever into the bibtex file. So like it just basically will be like, here's the letter, here's the character, like the accent or whatever. Right after it, it can't render that.
Okay.
Like, oh, this character then should be written this way for a LaTeX command. So then bibtex doesn't know, like that file when you run it, it doesn't know what to do. So
yeah, it's kind of an UTF ISO 88, that kind of a mess up.
Yeah, character encodings. Yeah.
So say, I mean, it may have to be a Zotero kind of import issue, where they can specify whether are you importing an UTF, are you using an ISO 88, or are you using a Latin one, or whatever that is. At that point, they may want to fix that game at their end.
Yeah.
It's definitely on their side. It's just something to look out for you guys too. Just I'm assuming when you pull stuff in like that, I don't know if it'll break. I don't know if it'll, like, if there's a way to go like, this doesn't make sense or something for folks. Even just to shout out to people to be like, you sure about this? So,
yeah.
I don't know.
Like one of the things in the back of my mind is like as we do some of that, Curvenote becomes a little bit of a reference manager, which I certainly hadn't thought about. Just I was trying to avoid that with taking on too much responsibility there, and so I'm curious what other people's thoughts are on taking on some of those other responsibilities. And because if people are even formatting their references and adding accents, that's putting the responsibility on us to give you user interfaces to do that, have editing experiences over in Curvenote, possibly starting to see PDFs over there as well. And then there's a lot of work as well. I guess I'm curious what other people's thoughts are. If we're writing a document or a document writing tool, does the best case of that just have a reference manager built in?
Not necessarily. I mean, people can still keep their references in wherever they want to do that. For example, if you think in terms of Google Docs, you can integrate a paper file reference management system with a Google Docs as an add-on, or you can use a Zotero as an add-on. Google Docs doesn't have to resolve or negotiate how the references are brought in. So that database remains separate. And so that's all right, and that's the reason why you can use other reference managers that have their own APIs from where you can call the specific or that particular thing. But what you may need to do, and you're doing it already there with your DOI, is the ability to search, say, for example, other databases. So, for example, the people were able to search something like PubMed or National Library of Medicine or Medline or other ones.
Yeah.
Then what happens is this, that you are not, you're kind of freeing yourself. Because who keeps what in whatever format in their own databases cannot be your headache.
Yep.
All you can do is to get them in and then render it as it shows there. Because people can mess up things in innumerable ways that we can think of. I mean, it's just.
I guess the only thing I would want in this would be that if I'm using Zotero and then I'm exporting a bibtex file, if I know I need to edit that because there are issues with Zotero, then I don't know if I want to have to go to some other text editor to do that. Or if I don't realize, it might be nice to just be able to have a place on Curvenote where you can actually edit a bibtex file, just so you're not like, okay, now I got to go find the file, open it on my computer, re-upload it. I feel like that's the only thing I would like.
Yeah.
That would be the most helpful. Otherwise, I'm kind of like, no, just Zotero does its thing. It like if something messes up when you render your LaTeX on Curvenote, then you can go and fix it. But just not having to leave and open another program would be nice.
Yeah, that'd be a nice failsafe. I mean, not just nice; it's a necessary failsafe, so that you don't get tripped up.
Yeah.
I mean, because LaTeX can be notorious in terms of overfull boxes and all that kind of things.
Yeah.
It's been so annoying. You've done your hard work for an entire day, and all of a sudden it says, "No, I can't render it because you've got overfull boxes."
Yeah.
You waited at least 10 minutes for the whole document to build, and then it's just like,
yeah,
so good.
It's not for nothing that people roll their eyes when you say that, okay, I write in LaTeX.
Yeah.
Sure. This make beautiful documents.
They do.
Getting there is a challenge.
Absolutely.
That's the true joy then of Curvenote. You're previewing those things, you're seeing them, you're interacting, and you're not having to run every time to see it. And that's like, if I don't have to write it in LaTeX, but I still get what LaTeX benefits are, that's like the best thing. It's like, look, it's all here, and I didn't have to go and go, oh, did I get that command right? Because it's just there. Like, it's just, it has the caption. Like, I could do it, I could code it, but there's UI, and I just click and go.
Okay. This was the first promise of Lix. Anyone use Lix?
No.
That LYX. They used to have a very nice interface. It was kind of quirky, but it was quite interesting. Yeah. That was that WYSIWYG where you could do whatever you like. It would still give you clean LaTeX behind the scenes.
Huh. That's kind of cool.
Peach colored pages. Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Great. Well, I think that's it. I think, yeah. There has to be some way to, I don't know, maybe resolve a problem when it comes to the crunch, or at least know where the problem begins. So we've got that double whammy that it could render on Curvenote, but still fail in LaTeX. And yeah.
I think that was the thing that I picked up on, was there's sort of the ability to search these other databases directly in line and pull from them, but we're not taking on responsibility until you actually decide to insert that into the document. And then I think there's, as long as we maintain that connection to where that was from your reference manager, then we have maybe the ability to bring up all of the citations in the project and address them either individually or like resync or that sort of idea.
On that note, a quick question. Is there a way to find out where the references are stored within a Curvenote document as we are writing in it? In other words, where can I look up for the documents? I know that I can type ref or I can type cite and that magically appears, but say if I wanted to go and take a look at the list of the documents, list of the references that are generated because of my search through the DOI within a Curvenote environment, where could I find it?
You can do that. Share the screen here. Let me see this guy. So there is as you said, there's this site piece where you can do that. You can also do /ref, which brings up this list, which is about as far as we've gotten with this. And so this is the add DOI piece. And then all of the references that are in this project, not this document, but the entire project are shown shown here.
But not cross projects. So it means that if there is a different citation in another project, then there's no way I can access that from within this particular project. So there is not that doesn't work because
it currently is project centric, I suppose.
That's fine.
And that's I was having that conversation with Steve like last week. In that I think that is one of those pieces where it does make sense to have the external reference manager, which has everything that you've seen, and maybe you have a folder in there that syncs to a Curvenote document or something like that, or Curvenote project. But yeah, at this stage we haven't or aren't sort of allowing you to reach across projects by default quite yet.
Well, my use case of Curvenote at the moment is not just to write my own papers, but get a group of students to come and collaborate and create documents and thesis and independent studies and things like that. And I keep thinking in what will make their lives a lot easier, because these people are not used to use something like Curvenote. They're more used to strike up, say, Word document and start writing right away. And that's what people have been doing. And I've been struggling with fellow academics in using, say, something like even Overleaf, because Overleaf has this nice WYSIWYG appearance. And if you tell them, oh, no, can you kindly convert that into a Word document, and then I can mark up and I can give you, it doesn't have X, it doesn't have Y that Word does. And it's always been a struggle. And I say, you don't really need to worry about those things. But they said, no, this is how we have been living our life all day, all life. So I don't want to move too. So the closer it resembles a nice looking Word document, the higher is the likelihood that you get a buy-in from the social sciences and that kind of community, academics. It's not a problem with physical sciences, chemistry, biology, genomics kind of folks. We are right. But the moment you start collaborating with something like social scientists or people who write a lot, then they'll start asking those kind of questions. For us, it's more of a question of, oh, well, there is your Jupyter notebook, there are the cells, we bring it in, see the magic that you click on this Curvenote and everything magically appears. And listen, that's all right. But
yeah, no, I can, well, it doesn't look like a Word document at the end of the day. Just the big butt there.
Can Curvenote do this?
Yeah.
I said, all right, not yet.
Yeah, that's right. Fantastic.
Well,
I have to jump
hour.
onto another meeting as well.
It was great to see everyone.
Yeah, thanks for joining, Arin.
Great to see
Yeah.
you the first time. Hope to see you again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And
Have a
see you
good
next time.
rest of your day
Yeah.
in the cold,
Good
as
evening.
it were.